This video contains references to violence and assault. All information is presented for educational purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised. In every studio vault, there are 8 reels they want you to see. But there is always a 9th, the one locked away, the one with the truth, the one they tried to destroy. Welcome to the 9th reel. Imagine this. You are a film director. You have made a movie. Critics call it a masterpiece. It earns millions of dollars. It gets nominated for 4 Academy Awards. The whole world is talking about your film. You should be the happiest person alive. But instead, you are sitting in your house in England, reading a letter that says, "We will murder you and your entire family." Your wife is shaking with fear. Your 3 daughters are being bullied at school because of what their father created. Someone has thrown a brick through your window. Someone has slashed your car tires. And then you make a decision that no director in the history of cinema has ever made before or since. You pick up the phone. You call the studio. And you say, "Pull my film from every single theater in this country. Ban it. I do not want anyone in Britain to ever see this movie again." That director was Stanley Kubrick. That film was A Clockwork Orange. And today, I am going to tell you the full story of how a movie terrorized an entire nation, how it was blamed for real murders and real rapes, how the man who created it lived in fear for the rest of his life, and how the actor who starred in it nearly went permanently blind during filming. Stay until the end, because the last piece of information I am going to share will genuinely shock you. Let us start at the very beginning. Not with Kubrick, not with the film, but with pain. Real, devastating, life-destroying pain. To understand this story, we need to go back to 1944. World War II is happening. German bombs are falling on London almost every night. The city is in chaos. During this time, a young British writer named Anthony Burgess was serving in the army. He was stationed in Gibraltar, far away from home. His wife, a woman named Lynn Jones, was living alone in London. One dark night, 4 American soldiers from an allied country, a country that was supposed to be fighting on the same side, these 4 soldiers broke into Lynn's home. They were drunk. They beat her. They kicked her. They assaulted her in the worst possible way. They raped her. Lynn was pregnant at the time. Because of the attack, she lost her unborn child. When Burgess heard this news from thousands of miles away, he completely broke down. He could not save his wife. He could not save his unborn baby. He could not do anything. He was helpless. This pain stayed with him for the rest of his life. It ate him from the inside. It never went away. Lynn Jones never recovered from that night. She became an alcoholic. Her mental health fell apart. Years later, she died from alcohol-related illness. You could say that Burgess lost his first wife twice, once on the night of the attack, and once more to the bottle. But Burgess was a writer, and writers do what writers do. They turn their pain into words. In 1962, almost 18 years after the attack, with that wound still burning in his chest, Burgess sat down and wrote a novel. That novel was called A Clockwork Orange. Now here is the thing about Burgess. He was not an ordinary writer. He was a genius of language. He spoke more than 6 languages fluently. He was a composer, a critic, a professor. And when he wrote this novel, he made a decision that was absolutely brilliant and absolutely insane at the same time. He invented a completely new language for the book. He called this language Nadsat. It was a mixture of Russian, English, Gypsy language, and London street slang. Why Russian? Because this was the era of the Cold War. The Soviet Union and the Western world were locked in a battle of ideologies. By mixing Russian into the language of British teenagers, Burgess was making a subtle political statement. He was saying that in the future, these 2 cultures would merge. East and West would bleed into each other. Let me give you some examples. In Nadsat, the word drug means friend. Horosho means good or excellent. Malchik means boy. Devochka means girl. And ultraviolence, well, that means exactly what it sounds like. The most extreme violence you can imagine. And it is the main character's favorite thing in the world. This invented language does something very clever to the reader. When you start reading the book, you understand nothing. The words make no sense. But slowly, page by page, you start to understand. You start thinking in Nadsat. And that is when you realize something terrifying. You have entered the mind of a monster, and you are starting to understand him. That was the genius of Burgess. Now let me tell you the story of the novel. The story takes place in a future version of England. Everything is broken. Society has collapsed. Young people roam the streets with no rules, no fear, no consequences. The government is powerless. The police are useless. In this world, there is a 15-year-old boy named Alex DeLarge. He is the narrator of the story. He is also the hero, or the villain, or both. That is the whole point. You cannot decide. And that confusion is what makes this story so powerful. Alex loves two things equally. The first is the music of Ludwig van Beethoven, especially the Ninth Symphony. The second is violence. Extreme, brutal, senseless violence. He enjoys both with the same passion, the same joy, the same ecstasy. When he listens to Beethoven, his eyes light up with something almost divine. When he beats a man unconscious, his eyes light up with the exact same light. This is one of the most disturbing ideas ever put into a novel. Beauty and destruction living in the same soul. Alex has three friends, Dim, Pete, and Georgie. He calls them his droogs. Every night, the four of them go out together. First, they visit the Korova Milk Bar. This is not a normal bar. They serve milk mixed with drugs. After drinking this drugged milk, they hit the streets. On the first night we follow them, they beat up a homeless old man. They get into a fight with a rival gang. They steal a car and drive it at insane speeds. And then they break into a house. Inside that house, there is a writer and his wife. The writer's name is Alexander. He is working on a book. And the name of that book, you will not believe this, is A Clockwork Orange. Yes, a book within a book, a story within a story. Burgess put himself inside his own novel. Alex and his gang beat the writer savagely. They tie him up. They force him to watch as they assault his wife. And while Alex does this, while he commits this unspeakable act, he sings a song. He sings Singin' in the Rain, cheerfully, joyfully, like a child playing in a garden. This scene is one of the most shocking moments in all of literature. And here is the heartbreaking truth. That writer character is Burgess himself. What happens to the writer's wife in the novel is what happened to Burgess's real wife, Lynn, in 1944. Burgess took his greatest pain, his greatest failure, his greatest guilt, and he turned it into fiction. He made himself a character in his own nightmare. The story continues. Alex's gang slowly turns against him. They are tired of him giving orders, tired of him being the boss. One night, Alex breaks into the house of a wealthy, older woman. He attacks her. She dies. It becomes a murder. When Alex runs outside, his own friends are waiting for him. They smash a bottle across his face. They leave him bleeding on the ground. The police arrive. Alex is arrested. He is sentenced to 14 years in prison. This is where the second half of the story begins. After 2 years in prison, Alex volunteers for something called the Ludovico technique. It is an experimental treatment. If it works, he will be released immediately. Alex wants out of prison, so he agrees. The Ludovico technique works like this. They strap Alex into a chair. They clamp his eyes open with a metal device so he cannot close them. Then they force him to watch hours and hours of extreme violence on a screen. Murder, beatings, rape, war footage, Nazi death camps. While he watches, they inject him with a drug that causes extreme nausea. Over time, his brain forms a permanent connection. Violence equals sickness. Violence equals pain. Violence equals vomiting. He becomes physically incapable of being violent. They put Alex on a stage in front of government officials and journalists. A man walks up and slaps Alex across the face. Alex cannot fight back. He falls to the floor, gagging and retching. They bring a beautiful woman in front of him. Alex cannot even touch her without feeling excruciating pain. The government celebrates. They announce that they have cured a criminal in just 2 weeks. But the prison chaplain asks a question that cuts straight to the heart of the story. Has this man truly become good? Or have you simply taken away his ability to choose evil? A man who cannot choose evil is not a good man. He is a machine. A clockwork orange. Something that looks organic and alive on the outside but is mechanical and dead on the inside. A truly good man is one who has the freedom to choose evil, but chooses good instead. This is one of the deepest philosophical questions ever asked in fiction. What is goodness? Is it goodness if you have no choice? Alex is released, but the outside world is a nightmare. His parents have rented out his room to a stranger. They do not want him back. He wanders the streets. The old homeless man he once beat up finds him and attacks him with a group of friends. Alex cannot fight back. He just vomits and collapses. Then his own former gang members, Dim and Billy, who are now police officers, find him. They drag him to the countryside and beat him brutally. Revenge for all the times Alex bossed them around. Beaten and broken, Alex stumbles to a nearby house. And whose house is it? The writer, Alexander, the same man whose wife Alex attacked at the beginning of the story. The writer does not recognize Alex at first because Alex was wearing a mask during the original attack. The writer takes Alex in. He feeds him. He helps him. But then, Alex makes a terrible mistake. While taking a bath, he starts singing. Singing in the rain. The same song he sang on that horrible night. The writer hears it. And in that moment, everything clicks. He realizes that this is the boy who destroyed his life. His wife killed herself after the attack. She could not live with the trauma. The writer wants revenge. He locks Alex in a room and blasts Beethoven's Ninth Symphony through speakers at maximum volume. Why? Because during the Ludovico treatment, Beethoven's music was accidentally linked with the violence footage. Now, whenever Alex hears Beethoven, he experiences the same unbearable pain and nausea. Alex cannot take it. To escape the pain, he throws himself out of a window. He tries to kill himself, but Alex does not die. He wakes up in a hospital. Now the government has a massive problem. The media reports that their experimental treatment drove a man to attempt suicide. The public is outraged. To save face, the government reverses the treatment. They undo the Ludovico technique. Alex goes back to being his old violent self. The last line of the story, as Alex narrates it, is chilling. He says, "I was cured all right." But he does not mean he became a good person. He means he is back to being the old Alex, the violent, dangerous, ultra-violent Alex. But here is something extremely important that most people do not know. The original novel that Burgess wrote had 21 chapters. Not 20. 21. And there is a very specific reason for that number. 21 is the age when a person legally becomes an adult. In that final 21st chapter, something remarkable happens. Alex grows up. He matures. Violence starts to bore him. It feels childish. He starts wanting a normal life. A wife. A family. A child. Burgess was saying something profound. Humans change naturally. Given enough time, people grow. They evolve. They do not need the government to force them to be good. Goodness comes with maturity, with age, with experience. But here is the tragedy. When the novel was published in America, the American publishers removed that final chapter. They said it was too optimistic. They said readers would not believe it. They said it was a weak ending. So they published the book with only 20 chapters. The American version ends with Alex still being violent. No growth, no redemption, no hope. And that American version, the one without the final chapter, is the version that spread across the world. That is the version that became famous. And that is the version that Stanley Kubrick read. Now let me tell you about Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick was born in 1928 in New York City into a Jewish family. As a child, he was not a good student. His grades were average at best. But he had two extraordinary talents: chess and photography. His father bought him a camera when he was 13 years old. That camera changed his life forever. By 17, he was working as a photographer for Look magazine. Kubrick became one of the greatest directors in cinema history. He made films like Spartacus, Dr. Strangelove, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and The Shining. Every single one is considered a masterpiece. But Kubrick was also something else. He was a perfectionist. An absolute, uncompromising, sometimes terrifying perfectionist. He would shoot a single scene 100 times until it was exactly right. He would push actors to their breaking point. He would control every tiny detail of every frame. When Kubrick read the American version of A Clockwork Orange, he knew immediately that he had to make it into a film. But he did not go to Burgess directly. He bought the rights through Warner Brothers Studio. He did not even offer Burgess the chance to write the screenplay. Kubrick wrote it himself. This made Burgess furious. Someone was turning his most personal work, a novel born from his wife's assault, into a film, and nobody even asked him. Now let me tell you what happened during filming. This is where the story gets truly disturbing. First, the casting. Kubrick chose an actor named Malcolm McDowell to play Alex. Malcolm was around 30 years old at the time, but he had to play a 15-year-old boy. Kubrick told Malcolm to bring his own personality into the character. He told him to improvise. The most famous scene in the entire film came from one of these improvisations. It is the scene where Alex attacks the writer and his wife. Kubrick was filming the scene and it was not working. Something was missing. So Kubrick told Malcolm, sing something. Do something unexpected. Malcolm could only remember one song completely from memory. Singin' in the Rain. So, he started singing it. While acting out the most horrifying scene in the film, Malcolm sang this cheerful, happy, innocent song. Kubrick loved it. But there was a problem. Singin' in the Rain was copyrighted. Warner Brothers would have to pay thousands of dollars for the rights to use it. Kubrick called Warner Brothers and said, either you buy the rights to this song, or I cut this scene from the film. Warner Brothers bought the rights immediately. Now here is the most horrifying behind-the-scenes fact. During the Ludovico treatment scene, the device that holds Alex's eyes open was real. It was an actual medical instrument called a lid lock. They really clamped Malcolm McDowell's eyes open. This was not a special effect. This was not movie magic. A real doctor was on set, dropping liquid into Malcolm's eyes every few seconds to keep them from drying out. But during one take, the metal clamp slipped. It scratched Malcolm's cornea. His eye started bleeding. Malcolm screamed in pain. But Kubrick did not stop the camera. That pain, that real suffering, that blood, it is all in the finished film. When you watch the Ludovico scene, when you see the tears streaming down Alex's face, those are not fake tears. That is real pain from a real injury. Malcolm McDowell said years later in an interview, working with Kubrick is like being on a battlefield. You never know when you're going to get hurt, but the experience makes you a better artist. Malcolm's cornea was permanently damaged. For the rest of his life, he had problems with that eye. He once said, I gave Kubrick my eye, and he gave me a masterpiece. The film was made on a surprisingly small budget, only about $2.2 million. That is roughly $15 million in today's money. Kubrick shot most of the film using natural light. He filmed in real locations around London. He used very few artificial sets. This gave the film a raw, gritty, uncomfortable feel that no amount of money could have created. The music for the film was done by Walter Carlos, who later changed her name to Wendy Carlos. She did something revolutionary. She took classical music by Beethoven and Rossini and recreated it using a Moog synthesizer, an electronic instrument. Classical music played through electronic machines. Old art through new technology. This was groundbreaking in 1971. The music sounds beautiful and disturbing at the same time. It makes you feel uncomfortable in a way you cannot quite explain. The film was released in December 1971 in America. It opened in Britain in January 1972. And the moment it hit British screens, two things happened simultaneously. Critics called it a masterpiece, and society erupted in absolute chaos. The British Censor Board gave the film an X rating. No one under 18 could see it, but this only made people want to see it more. The forbidden fruit is always the sweetest. Young people across Britain became obsessed with Alex. They started copying his look. The white outfit, the fake eyelash on one eye, the bowler hat, the walking cane. Some teenagers actually dressed like Alex and walked the streets at night. And then the real crimes started. First incident, 1972. In Oxfordshire, a 16-year-old boy dressed in the exact same white outfit as Alex attacked an elderly man on the street. He kicked him. He beat him. The old man died. In court, the lawyer argued that the boy had been inspired by A Clockwork Orange. Second incident. In Lancashire, a 17-year-old boy kidnapped a younger boy. He took him to an abandoned building. He tortured him in the exact same way shown in the film. He sang Singin in the rain while beating him. Think about that for a moment. A teenager recreated a scene from a movie in real life, down to the song. Third incident. This one is even worse. In Watford, a Dutch tourist was gang-raped in her own home by a group of men. While they attacked her, they sang Singin' in the Rain, just like Alex and his droogs in the film. This story made national headlines. Newspapers printed the words "Clockwork Crime" on their front pages. Fourth incident. A 16-year-old boy murdered his classmate. When police searched his room, they found A Clockwork Orange posters on every wall. He told police he wanted to live like Alex. Fifth incident. In California, a young man brutally attacked a priest. When police arrested him, he said he was inspired by A Clockwork Orange. More than 10 similar cases were reported across Britain. Homeless people were attacked by gangs of teenagers. Houses were broken into. The term copycat crimes became associated with this film. The British media went absolutely crazy. Newspapers like the Daily Mail, The Sun, and the Daily Express wrote articles attacking the film every single day. They demanded an immediate ban. Members of Parliament stood up in the House of Commons and called the film a crime manual. Religious leaders called it the work of the devil. Parent groups organized protests outside cinemas. A judge, while delivering a verdict in one of these cases, said publicly that he believed the crime would not have happened if the defendant had not watched A Clockwork Orange. But there were also people who defended the film. One famous critic said that the film does not glorify violence. It shows the absurdity and meaninglessness of violence. The film is against violence, she argued, but it makes its argument by showing violence rather than simply talking about it. Now we come to the most critical part of this story. The death threats against Stanley Kubrick. Letters started arriving at Kubrick's home. They said things like, "You are a criminal who creates criminals. We will kill you and your family." Someone threw a brick through his window. Someone slashed his car tires. Kubrick's wife, Christiane Harlan, was terrified. She was afraid to leave the house. Kubrick's 3 daughters were bullied and isolated at school. Other children told them, "Your father makes killer movies." Kubrick was already a very private, very anxious person. He was afraid of flying. He was afraid of crowds. He rarely appeared in public. These death threats pushed his fear to an extreme level. In 1973, Kubrick made a decision that has no parallel in cinema history. He personally wrote to Warner Brothers and demanded that they immediately stop showing A Clockwork Orange in Britain. He wanted a total ban, not just theaters, television, video rental, film festivals, university screenings, everything. No one in Britain should be able to see this film in any format. A director banning his own film. This has never happened before, and it has never happened since. It is the only time in the history of cinema that a filmmaker actively suppressed his own masterpiece. Warner Brothers agreed. The film was pulled from every screen in Britain overnight. And here is what happened next. The ban made the film even more legendary. People became obsessed with seeing the forbidden movie. Some British people traveled to France just to watch it, because France had no ban. Bootleg video cassettes appeared on the black market. A single cassette sold for up to £150. In the 1970s, that was an enormous amount of money. In 1993, a small cinema club in London called the Scala Cinema secretly screened the film one time. Kubrick found out. He had Warner Brothers sue the cinema. The Scala was hit with a massive fine. That is how seriously Kubrick enforced this ban. The ban lasted for 27 years. Let that sink in. 27 years. An entire generation of British people grew up knowing that there was a legendary, dangerous, forbidden film out there that they were not allowed to see. On March 7, 1999, Stanley Kubrick died in his sleep of a heart attack. He was 70 years old. Just days before his death, he had finished the final edit of his last film, Eyes Wide Shut. After his death, Kubrick's family made a decision. They lifted the ban on A Clockwork Orange in Britain. In the year 2000, the film was shown again in British theaters for the first time in 27 years. Tickets sold out instantly. People lined up around the block. There was enormous excitement about finally seeing the forbidden film. But here is the interesting thing. When people actually watched it in the year 2000, many of them were surprised. It did not feel as shocking as they expected. Why? Because in those 27 years, cinema had changed dramatically. Films like Pulp Fiction, Fight Club, and Natural Born Killers had already pushed the boundaries of on-screen violence far beyond what A Clockwork Orange showed. What was absolutely shocking in 1971 felt almost normal by the year 2000. Time changes everything. Now let me tell you about Burgess, the man who started all of this, the man who wrote the novel. Anthony Burgess hated the film. He said so publicly, many times, in many interviews. He had several reasons. First, Kubrick left out the final chapter, the 21st chapter, the chapter where Alex grows up and becomes a better person. Burgess said, "The entire meaning of my novel is in that last chapter. I was saying that humans change, humans grow, humans mature." Kubrick removed that message. He killed the soul of my book. Second, Burgess felt that Kubrick made violence look beautiful. In the novel, violence is described as ugly, disgusting, sickening. But Kubrick's camera work, his slow motion, his music choices, they turned violence into something that looked almost like ballet. Burgess hated this. Third, and perhaps most painfully, A Clockwork Orange became the only thing Burgess was known for. He wrote more than 33 novels in his lifetime. He composed music. He wrote poetry. He was a scholar of languages. But nobody cared about any of that. To the whole world, he was simply the man who wrote A Clockwork Orange. Nothing else mattered. The book followed him everywhere like a shadow he could not escape. Burgess once said, "I wrote that book in 3 weeks. I wrote it for money. It is not my best work." But the world did not care. The world had decided. Burgess equals A Clockwork Orange. A Clockwork Orange equals Burgess, forever. Burgess died in 1993 of lung cancer. He carried bitterness about the film until his last breath. The film was nominated for 4 Academy Awards: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, and Best Editing. It won none. The Best Picture that year went to The French Connection, but the fact that such a controversial film was nominated at all showed remarkable courage from the Academy. Over the decades, A Clockwork Orange has appeared on almost every list of the greatest films ever made. The American Film Institute included it in their top 100 films. The British Film Institute ranked it among the greatest British films of all time. Today, it is universally recognized as one of the most important and influential films in cinema history. Let me talk about Malcolm McDowell for a moment, the man who played Alex. After A Clockwork Orange, Malcolm became world famous, but he also became permanently typecast. Hollywood saw him as only one thing: a villain, a psychopath, a dangerous man. Every role he was offered was some version of Alex. He wanted to play a romantic lead, a kind father, a normal human being. Nobody would let him. Malcolm once said, "Alex is both my curse and my blessing. He made me famous, but he also trapped me." The cornea scratch from the Ludovico scene caused permanent damage to his eye. He often joked about it, saying, "I gave Kubrick my eye and he gave me a masterpiece." But behind the joke, there was real pain. Now I want to ask you something important. Why does this film still matter today? Why should you care about a movie made more than 50 years ago? First, think about the debate around media and violence. Today, people argue about whether video games cause violence, whether social media causes violence. whether online content radicalizes young people. This is the exact same debate that happened in 1971 with A Clockwork Orange. 50 years later, we are still asking the same question. Does art create violence? Or does art simply reflect the violence that already exists in society? Kubrick himself answered this question beautifully. He said, "Saying that a film about violence causes violence is like saying a film about rain causes rain. Art is a mirror. It reflects reality. It does not create reality." Second, think about government control. Today, China has a social credit system that monitors citizens and scores their behavior. Surveillance cameras watch us everywhere. Artificial intelligence recognizes our faces. Our phones track our every movement. Is this not a modern version of the Ludovico technique? Forcing people to behave, not because they choose to, but because they are being watched and controlled? Third, think about cancel culture. Today, if a book, a film, or a song offends someone, there are immediate calls to ban it, to remove it, to cancel it. A Clockwork Orange was the cancel culture victim of its era, but the question remains. Who gets to decide that a work of art is too dangerous for the public? Who gets to draw that line? And finally, the deepest question of all. Is there an Alex inside all of us? Are we good because we choose to be good? Or are we good because we are afraid of the consequences of being bad? If there were no laws, no police, no cameras, no punishment, would we still be good people? This is the question A Clockwork Orange forces you to confront. And it is a question most people are too afraid to answer honestly. That is the power of this film. It does not comfort you. It disturbs you. It does not give you answers. It gives you questions. And those questions stay with you long after the credits roll. Stanley Kubrick once said something that I think perfectly captures what this film is about. He said, "The most terrifying fact about the universe is not that it is hostile. It is that it is indifferent. The universe does not care whether we are good or evil. That choice is entirely ours. And that freedom, that terrifying, beautiful, overwhelming freedom to choose, is what makes us human." A Clockwork Orange is not a comfortable film. It was never meant to be. It is a mirror held up to society, and society did not like what it saw. So society tried to smash the mirror, but the reflection remains. If you made it to the end of this video, you are part of a rare group of people who are not afraid to think about uncomfortable truths. Thank you for watching. If this video made you think, hit the like button. If you want more stories like this, stories that cinema tried to bury, subscribe to the 9th Reel and turn on notifications. Next week, I am going to tell you about a film that was so disturbing, so unbelievably horrifying, that the director was actually arrested and charged with murder. The police believed that the actors in the film were actually killed on camera. He had to bring the actors to court alive to prove he did not murder them. That story is coming next week. Until then, remember, every film has a story they told you, and a story they buried. I will see you on the next reel.